morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Neosmotic, and I welcome you all to another talk. And today we're going to have Nanotopia and Neurochem, presenting a talk at the intersection between art, science, and technology. So we are all looking forward for your talk. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for contributing to our community of education and science and art as well. This session, as you know, are recorded on Twitch, and the recording are put on YouTube. So if you feel uncomfortable with this, we'll still have a chance, for you to move out of that room. But Jason Moore here, our director, is recording all the session, and we are projecting this live at the moment on Twitch. And let me also salute our audience on Twitch. Welcome, everybody. Nanotopia and Neurochem, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes so you can introduce yourself, and then please start your talk as soon as you are ready. I have a little timer here that we start, so you have about half an hour. We have plenty of time. And after that, we will have a Q&A session. So I pass to you, Nanotopia. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, thank you so much, Neosmotic and Jason and the Neos Edu Science group for having us. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm going to introduce myself pretty much with the slide, too. But I'm Nanotopia. In real life, my name is Tosca Turan. And this is my colleague and friend, Neurochems.
Hi.
AKA Brendan Lehman. And so I'll just start talking about myself a little bit and then move into the project. And we also have some videos that we'll be sharing with audio. So let us know, of course, if you can hear everything okay and things like that. So again, my name's Tosca Turan, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist. I'm a metalsmith, glass artist. I've done that for over 30 years. And I'd say about 10 years ago, I started really wanting to look at different materials that I could work with. I wasn't feeling great, even though I was recycling my metal and I do the best I can with glass. Both take a lot of energy, and metal isn't great, just in mining it. So I started looking at different things I could work with, like paper, but then there was the tree issue. And something I was doing around that time is growing gourmet mushrooms at home. And I started wondering about the substrate, like if I could reuse that substrate, not just to grow mushrooms, but maybe I could sculpt with it and things like that. But because a lot of my work, even in metalsmithing and creating installations there or with glass, I always involve sound, like some sort of soundscape, or the objects themselves make sound. So I started becoming very fascinated, like if the mycelium made sound, if the mushrooms made sound, and how I might be able to hear these things. So I took part in a workshop at a place in Toronto, Canada, called Interaccess, and it was working with slime mold, Physarum polycephalum, and super fascinating organism. And we were looking at it in different ways, like you might be able to work with it as a computer or as an interface, like kind of using it like a wire for electronics. So it would, bridge different aspects and act as a trigger, which made me start thinking, wow, again, maybe I could listen to the mycelium, but how? So long story short, I started researching a lot of different circuits and things that, like how could I hear it? Does it make a sound? And I came upon a schematic where I could build like kind of what's called a biomodule. And it's based off Electricity for Progress's Sam Kusumano, who's an electrical engineer. He built something for a company called Data Garden called the MIDI Sprout. So I put together a MIDI sprout, essentially. And I'm leaving it on this slide right now, just so you can see, like, I have Midnight Mushroom Music Archive on SoundCloud. So I put together this module. So imagine, if you will, it's like a circuit board, and there's electrodes that come off of that, and I could put those electrodes onto the mycelium. And when I did, something really unexpected happened for me, because I'll be honest, I didn't really think anything was going to happen, or maybe it would be like little blips and bloops. But it was much more than that. So I started really focusing in more on these different sounds and collecting this raw biodata, and also cultivating more fungi and different types of mushrooms like Ganoderma lucidum, which is also known as reishi. Hi. And Pleurotus austriatus, hey, which is oyster mushrooms. And so on this slide, I'm showing some different installations that have happened since more recently, since 2019. So here with this globe was the mycelium Martian dome, along with a lot of the sound work I do with the mycelium. I've also been looking at it as a biomaterial, like I mentioned, sculpting it and things like that. So for what's behind this globe here, I made these panels that are out of mycelium that's living and growing in a hemp substrate. And so that's a geodesic dome. And this bubble here was the concept of like the Martian. So people could hear the mycelium creating a soundscape within this dome. And this center slide, or image, sorry, is forest undersound, which showed in 2019. I mean, it installed just as the pandemic sadly hit everywhere around the world, but it was allowed to grow over 7 months within this container. And it was hooked up to a number of Eurorack synthesizers. So as it would grow, this soundscape would change and evolve. And I have a slide, rather a video here, that if Neosmotic could start that up, it shows at a certain point, the mycelium took over the entire case and actually escaped the case. Can people hear the audio? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So what happened is, like right here in this center image, is I had done some cardboard cultivation where I introduced some mycelium to cardboard, rolled it up, and they turn white as the mycelium takes over. And then what you see in that video is the mycelium has completely gone through that entire hemp substrate, and then it burst out of the case, which was completely unexpected, but sometimes that happens. And then the last image over there with these people sitting in this is a Space 10 grow room, and I created the mycorrhizal rhythm machine. So as the plants grew and there's mycorrhizal fungi within the plant roots, again, there was a soundscape created, and people could interact with it by putting their hands on these special touch plates. But I've been really wanting to bring like kind of an environment or an experience into virtual reality, more of a, I guess, kind of a hybrid installation where there's augmented reality and then there's the virtual reality. So people can go within the mycelium network within this forest, and working with haptic sensors, they might even be able to feel the mycelium, trigger these sensors and things like this. So this is a first iteration that Neurochems and I worked on. And so this all came about, kind of this whole proposal for Symbiosis, Dysbiosis, which is the name of the project with the VR component, through the Goethe Institute held a climate science exchange in May 2020. And I was very fortunate to have been an invited artist to be able to present my work. And then after a week of meeting with different artists, scientists, and technologists, we were all given the opportunity to present an idea towards a new nature. And this new nature for me involves non-human organisms. And of course, I'm a huge fan of fungi. So fungi definitely is the non-human organism and communication within a forest. So if we could play the next video, please.
It will take a few seconds to.
Okay, I don't see it. So this
is. It's gonna be there.
Oh, that's kind of out of line, but that's okay. I'll talk about this. This is the mycelium is hooked up going into Touch Designer here, and I'm just testing whether it can create a point cloud. We're working with photogrammetry and point clouds. And so the mycelium is creating this form, and as I touch it, it disrupts the form. So this is a form of testing I was doing to see, like, not only could it be creating the soundscape at the same time, it would be interfering and kind of disrupting these visuals in some way. And so I'm not sure if you can see it, because to me, it looks cut off. But I am touching the fungi. And as I touch the fungi, you can hear kind of the sounds change, and you can see this point cloud kind of alter. Go to that. Yeah, so mycelium as a sensor works. So after Neurochems and I did this first iteration for the Goethe Institute's Climate Science Exchange, I really started thinking about the visuals more so and how we might be able to work with photogrammetry and point cloud images, because to me, point clouds have more of a microbial kind of look to them, or they can. And that's part of the whole visual like element of this environment that I'm wanting to create, is have it look like, you know, these forms that are obvious, like trees and mushrooms and things like that, and human hands, but that they're in this what's referred to as the holobiont. So like these multitudes of different organisms that make up these forms. And I feel that photogrammetric point clouds really work fantastically for that. So we've been working with new media artist, photographer Alison Moore, who's based in Montreal. And she captured some of these imageries from coastal rainforests in British Columbia. And just how can we create also like a one-of-a-kind experience? Like we have the mycelium that will be, you know, as people move around the living mycelium within an installation space or in a studio space, it reacts and responds to the human presence. And also, like if you touch an element, and how we're working with that touch element is through haptic sensors. So you trigger, you know, something within the VR space that then triggers the motor, you know, the haptic motors that are around the mycelium. So that to the mycelium, it's like you touched it. Another thing that I've done is I've embedded different kind of UV LEDs and let them grow, like the mycelium grows around them. So proximity sensors also can trigger the mycelium. But to add to that, I thought it would be fascinating to work with Neurochems and creating kind of a one-of-a-kind environment through human brainwaves, human emotion within this space. Like how are people, you know, responding to these visuals and to the mycelium itself? So I have another slide that shows, or rather, sorry, video that shows more of the point clouds that we're working with moving into a VR space where these point clouds have been brought in. And the sound that you hear with each of these videos is entirely created from living mycelium. Oh, well,
okay,
actually,
it's going to take,
this is the wrong slide.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. That's not it. That's not it. They're not it. No.
All right.
Yeah, let's try. It's a sneak peek spoiler. Okay, so
right. Is this the number 4?
Nope. That's incorrect. Can you go up higher? Because it...
Wait. Is this?
No, this is wrong.
No?
No.
Well, we have seen number 2. We have seen number 1.
I think we skipped number 2. So
yeah, I think... 2. Can you go up? Neosmotic, can you go up one? Because there's one.
This one?
Yeah, I think so.
That's the first one. That's the one.
Okay, then can you? There's one. They're not in order. Can you go? There's one I see above it, or it's missing.
That's number 5. So this one,
but
we have seen this one.
Yeah, I know, but then, I guess we're missing a slide or yeah, we're missing. Well, I don't know what happened to it, but yeah. Number 2.
Should we try the other player?
No. Wait. All the video are here.
That's not
just
it.
Give a chance. Just give a chance to that video to load.
But I see it, and it's not the correct video.
And it's not that one.
No.
So then there was number 3. Let me know, Nanotopia, if that one is the one you're after.
Okay.
If not, it's the number 4.
Okay. No. But that's okay.
No.
Go to the website. There. You can go to the website and see it. But yeah, so with symbiosis, dysbiosis, we were looking at different. This isn't right either. So can you stop it?
Well, sure.
Yeah.
From the left layer here, are those the same?
I don't know.
They're the same.
I didn't load them, so.
I did. You know, there was 5 video, and they're all there. Okay, they were repeated, but they're all there. So I'm not too sure which one you're after.
The one I'm after is not there. But that's okay. So yeah, so this is more about the mycelium interface. And so right here, I don't know if this works, if you guys can see my laser. So can everybody see what I'm pointing at? Or maybe Neurochems can stand under it?
No, Nanotopia. Look, if you point to that one here, people will see your laser.
Oh, okay, okay. So I'm pointing at that. Okay, great. Sorry about that. I love VR because it's like, a little quirky. So this is a biodata module that what it does is it detects micro fluctuations in conductivity between 1,000th to 100,000th of a second, and it translates that in real time through Arduino code. It's quantizing it, so it can quantize it into a custom scale or a chromatic scale, a pentatonic scale, like different things like that. So you can hear the sound of the mycelium, like you're hearing that conductivity, so you're hearing it change as you touch it and different things like that. It reacts and responds. So generally I have it hooked up here. If I'm not out collecting raw biodata using like an iPad or something like that, I'll just often take what I am collecting as MIDI data, and then later I might put that MIDI data through Ableton, or like earlier I showed, I could bring it into Touch Designer. We can bring it into Unity. I also have another module in here that you can't really see, but it's in there. And it's a special Eurorack module that uses this same kind of schematic broken out. So I can go control voltage out and gates out within the synthesis, like this whole system here. And I can have the mycelium through, my touching it, or if somebody even comes into the room, sometimes things will change. Or if my cat walks into the room, and I don't know, I might know suddenly because the music's changing. And this is something I'm wanting to look into further. Right now, I'm taking part in a residency. I will talk about that in a little bit. Why is the mycelium, like, what is it detecting? Is it, it's not a plant, but similarly, is it similar to a plant, where plants react to predators and they send chemical signals out to other plants to kind of warn them that there's a predator nearby? So I'm very fascinated with how the mycelium responds to people. So that's interesting to me, and how we can work with that, in virtual reality too, in a social kind of platform. So I'm going to pass the mic now to Neurochems. So Neurochems can talk or speak more on the tech and gear and what they're doing.
Sure.
Go
Hi,
for it.
everybody. I'm going to push forward. Uh-oh. There it is. That's me. Hi, everyone. I'm Brendan. I am based in Toronto with Tosca. I'm a neuroscientist by trade and a media artist more by hobby. But it's the lines are blurring these days. I work. My day job is at a startup in Toronto called True Love. We make a self-care focused app. And I've worked previously at Muse and have given talks at various places and do other event organizing with the video game community in Toronto. And I've given a workshop at the gallery in Toronto that Tosca mentioned, Interaccess, about using biodata, specifically with EEG, and sending the data into Unity. And Tosca took the workshop and got in touch with me after about getting involved with the New Nature project, and here we are. So, following that New Nature project, and the themes of that New Nature and the way that humans interact with their environment and the way they exchange with non-human life forms. We thought that it would be really interesting to explore how the project could integrate feedback from the player as well as the mycelium. So we put me to work integrating OpenBCI technology is what we're using to capture EEG data. We're using their ganglion board, which is just a 4-channel board. It's is a lot easier to work with when you have to strap it to the VR headset. You can kind of see in that picture here that it's just us like wedging it in the strap for now. It's a lot of prototyping going on still, and we're working on transitioning into production soon. So we'll have some time to build ourselves a proper headset and things. But yeah, we're using the data from the OpenBCI ganglion board, and we send the data to and from, or mostly to Unity via an OSC stream. That's something that OpenBCI provides in their GUI, makes it very easy. Predominantly working with fan power data. It's a pretty simple thing to do, and if you place the electrodes on specific sites that we know are involved with immersion and integrated experiences like that, then you can use that to influence the things in the environment. So we're also using a little device called the Emotibit, which was recently available over the pandemic. It's a really great wearable sensor that captures all kinds of biodata. We got started using the heart rate data with its PPG sensor. Also, it has a GUI that can stream into Unity with OSC streams also. OSC streams are great. I recommend them. They're really useful for sending data to other audio softwares that Tosca mentioned, like Touch Designer and Ableton and things like that. So very, very flexible systems. So yeah, from the Emotibit data, we're planning on adding galvanic skin response, skin temperature, and a little bit of data from its magnetometer that it also has, just some local magnetic data, just to add some color. And yeah, you can get a lot of information about the wearer and players' physiological, emotional states, and for a lot of things that we can reflect in the game environment. So a large part of my work in grad school and as a neuroscientist has been born out of a really keen interest in ways that humans and basically everything on Earth can be connected, and a major part that I've focused on in that way are the human residences of the Earth. It's a magnet effect in the Earth's magnetosphere that is generated by the average of lightning strikes taking place across the Earth at any time. And it generates a resonant frequency within the Earth's magnetic sphere of 8, 14, 21, 27, and 34 hertz. And it just kind of bounces along, as you can see by the video over there. And so these are specific frequencies we're focusing on in the project as a means to interpret some kind of connection between the player and the mycelium as they're both immersed in the Earth's magnetic field together. So yeah, just taking those as the band power from the EEG kind of harmonizes with these frequencies. We have it coded so there's a little bit of a score that gets generated when these things become true. And as the score builds, it builds and adds and subtracts. It has different effects on the point clouds, and they'll take different actions. Yeah, you can play that video too. This is a little sample of kind of how it happens. You can see it kind of picking up speed around now, and it kind of, this particular example kind of has a very neat, like almost painted effect. Like there's some live brush stroking going on. This is, yeah, just an early prototype. There's lots we can do with this. This is also running on my very old machine, so the point cloud number is considerably lower than what we're planning to show. So just a little sneak taste of it, but yeah, it's very exciting the way we can kind of take these numbers and use them to kind of paint and manipulate the forest around us, and feel how it can harmonize with the audio of the mycelium, and kind of having that just happening. And that's pretty much that's it from me. If you have any questions, please get in touch. And
oh yeah, we'll have a Q&A.
Yeah, back to Tosca.
Okay. So yeah, so other visuals that we're working with, so like the point cloud information is the forest. So like this molecular, like I mentioned, like this, holobiont world that you're in. But as like what Brendan said, as the numbers become true or start to align, you'll start to enter the mycelium network. Or maybe, who knows, maybe in VR we could create routes that would be slides that people could slide down into the mycelium network. And these visuals here, so what's happening here is right now I'm actually, I'm not in Toronto, I'm in Buffalo, New York. I'm taking part at the Cola Center for Biological Art residency. I'm a resident there. And my residency involves SEM imagery. I'm going to be working with an atomic force microscope. We're going to see what kind of 3D data we can output, but we're also really interested in the different frequencies that the mycelium that, for instance, we'll be working with are generating, and what we can find there, as well as confocal imagery. And this image right here, I should say, this image is mine that I took when I was at Carleton University. Oh, wow. I don't know what's happening right now, but I hear birds. I don't know if everybody else heard that. That was cool. Oh, the timer maybe. Okay. And confocal. So this is Bacillus cocoris's imagery, and this is actually mycorrhizal fungi. And so using those images and sculpting different 3D environments, maybe using Gravity Sketch and Blender and things like that, and turning, like maybe the SEM imagery into different types of bump maps, textures, and things, of bringing that into a social VR kind of platform. And so I'm really interested in what we could do in a social platform. I did work on another project in VR chat, but I'm really interested in Neos and the capabilities of what Neos has, and how we might be able to have, say, multiple headsets hooked up. Something like we're really anxiously waiting for from OpenBCI is the Gallia headset, which they've partnered with Index Valve. And so the front end, of course, is the beautiful Valve headset, and the whole back now of the headset will have like all these electrodes, and I'm guessing different kinds of sensors within the band. And that was scheduled, and I don't know if it's still on schedule, to kind of go to beta in spring of this year. But with the pandemic and everything, I know, supply chain issues have been fairly huge. I know they are for me, and getting a lot of electronic parts and things like that, it can be tricky for certain ICs. But so we're looking for collaborators. We do have some funding from the Canada Arts Council and the Ontario Arts Council for some commission works. But yeah, so that's what we're doing. And I guess because the bird timer went off, I'll stop talking now. And if anybody has any questions for myself or for Neurochems, let us know. Yeah. Right. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nanotopia. Yeah. Thank you, Neurochem. This is a very fascinating talk. I'm pretty sure that people from the floor here have a lot of questions for you. Who wants to start? Yes, Chaos Princess.
Thank you so much. That's so fascinating, and I love how you dive into like that.
Oh
yes.
Podcast mode, yeah.
That was the one. That one.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent.
So thank you so much. That's so fascinating, and I think like also really groundbreaking to facilitate like communication from nature to humans and back. I have one little understanding question about how you're gonna use like the bio neurofeedback from the humans or the users. Is this just gonna be observed and like display how the human reacts to the experience, or are you gonna have like a game-like neurofeedback challenge, like that's all relaxed together in a circle, and then maybe we can make the mushroom grow?
Something I have thought about is where people, okay, they're in the environment, and how, like in our first iteration, right, when we did it, it was a very gray, stormy day. At that time, we didn't have a headset on people with a ganglion or things like that hooked up. That was primarily, we were looking at like the mycelium things, but how did people respond to going within this forest environment? And there was one person that really responded well to the environment. In fact, they told us they didn't want to leave because it was this beautiful forest and it was sunny. And I've thought it might be interesting, you know, to do kind of a mindfulness, like, or people, that's something that maybe, you know, to be honest, I'm thinking about for the onboarding, that it might involve that, like how do people learn that, okay, we're going into this forest and we want to kind of become chill, if you will, you know, or one with this mycelium. And so that's, I think, part of the visual like element that might be happening. And because we're also working with, because of it being an installation, with other visuals and things going on, there will be like a scent factor that, you know, something like when people do or touch a certain thing that triggers an aerosol, like, or a, you know, like a solenoid that then sprays, you know, like the scent of the forest. And it's far enough away, you know, like how does that affect people psychologically? I'm definitely interested in that and further immersion. But I think with the Schumann resonance, that's something that we're thinking of, right? With alignment or people kind of matching, you know, because the data, the frequencies can be very similar. Is that correct? You could maybe elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about your question, I think there's going to be some elements of both involved. Like, as Tosca mentioned, there will be a certain period of getting the player oriented, because probably going to be a little overwhelming as someone like coming in off the street and like getting attached to all these devices, and we'll have to work in a way to like tell people what's happening. And that will be a kind of that mindfulness exercise. And then as they get more comfortable in the environment and start exploring it a little bit, then it'll be turn into more of a passive, like just things reacting to how you're reacting, and then there'll be that more of that dynamic give and take, rather than it being this directed text on screen kind of thing.
Yeah, I thought with that, with the brain data and the emotion data, in a way that's creating perhaps a one-of-a-kind experience for each person. If outside, like let's say if this is a standalone setup where it's not in a social VR platform, it, you know, you're in there by yourself and you're touching things and things are responding to how, you know, you are emotionally. Is the mycelium kind of jiving with you? Does it feel comfortable? Does the forest, like, how are you even in life when you go into a forest environment? And then this is like this virtual thing. I think that there's a lot of interesting room perhaps for exploration in that visually, like how, you know, we'll work with it. When we did the first iteration, essentially we were just, things would glow, you know, that was like things would start glowing. But I'm interested in it being more of an experience, like definitely, and people learning more kind of about the connectivity within, you know, I'm choosing, you know, coastal rainforests of British Columbia and boreal regions of Canada for this, because, you know, you find mycelium connecting the trees there and things like that. So I thought that, you know, kind of paints like a beautiful space. And now with forest bathing, I don't know if I've just recently learned that this is a thing. I guess I've been doing it for a long time, but I didn't know it was called forest bathing. But you go, you know, you go into nature and you just feel fantastic. And, you know, I think working with that.
Right. Other questions? Yes, Joris.
Hi, thank you for this amazing presentation. I still try to make sense of the sheer amount of different things you try to connect. But I'm situated in the arts, and I'm very curious whether because you seem to be interested in connecting people to nature or reconnect people to nature, but at the same time, I'm also curious how you look at this from a more like post-human perspective, that you're equal partners with the system rather than the mycelium performing for humans in a sort of like a hierarchy or in an instrumental way. And I'm curious about your thoughts, how you want to, in a way, introduce a more like post-human perspective to this, so you become part of a system rather than trying to control it or just, consume it. And another thing I was wondering is that a lot of these synthetic worlds that we live in tend to be dead if we don't fill it with our own life and chatter and stuff like that. And I thought, how great would it be if the mycelium would sort of have a headless server where it would constantly feed its bio information into Neos, and things would grow or change as a result. So you would have a non-human origin to the things that happen to like virtual spaces. So in a way, like nature, it gets its own life and its own purpose in a way, or its own will. So I was curious if you have thoughts on that as well. So it's a bit much, but anyway,
no, yes,
there you go.
Yes, absolutely. When I work with the mycelium, I feel, for as much as it's possible for me, there are some scientists that I've worked with that tell me they feel I have an affinity, or it has affinity for me or my working with it, because I tend to not have issues, generally speaking, with contaminants, for instance. But for this type of thing, the experience to me is about connecting, like people becoming more aware, if you will, to their holobiont nature, like that we are these multitudes that make us up or make us human, if you will. And how does the mycelium or the fungi, how much of us are them? And if I can go there with that, I'm interested in people connecting with nature, like say, or becoming more aware. Not that everybody's unaware. However, from my experience working with mycelium, I have found people to some of my installations are just completely shocked, or they're just brought to tears because they've not considered non-humans other than, say, the cat they might have, or a dog they have in their life, or a fish they have in their life. Something that's not furry, that doesn't have eyes, that can look at us as being perhaps sentient, if you will, or having some sort of cognition. And I know that research more and more has been looking at these different things and finding, like mycelium has action potential. And there is actually a colleague, or if I can call him that, friend, Professor Andrew Adamatsky, who I think recently just became more mainstream because The Guardian and Newsweek and different things posted his research and findings in mycelium fungi being able to speak. But he's really referring to this cognition and this action potential and what's really going on. So yeah, I am interested in a post-human. I don't know if that even touches upon your question, but I am interested in that. And I have wondered, kind of, would it involve logics, like some sort of AI to have, like, we could definitely feed the biodata into Neos from living mycelium, and I'm guessing create a space, but how could we, like, that's something beyond me, definitely. How something like that would stay generating or growing, because these are things I've explored in some installations where the mycelium is left, from start to finish, and all the different permutations of, things dying and rotting and then sporing and coming back. And how I work with that is through sound. So people can visually see, these transformations taking place, but they can also hear it sonically, like things either get louder, or they, become more ambient, or they become more chaotic. And I'm very fascinated in that. I don't know how that would work in Neos, but if anybody knows if there's any programmers in here, or I'm very interested in creating something like that. I think it could be incredibly fascinating, and definitely, from my understanding, that's also why we're here in NEOS presenting too. Is that there are the people that know how to work with AIs and logics and stuff like that to connect to these different things.
Yeah.
We have another.
Thank you.
We have another few. Sorry,
Okay.
yeah, I don't want to interrupt. You were about to say something.
Oh, I was just going to add something quick to that. Just with the sound of the mushrooms, I think mechanically within the installation, that's going to play a big part of how the player kind of creates like a symbiosis within the environment as opposed to a colonial dominance. By just reacting to the audio, it's going to play a large part of the installation and spatializing the sound and things, and just the way that will react, and then the way that they'll react to that, and the way that the sensors will pick up their reaction, and then how that may feed back into the mushroom and create this loop. I think we'll do a pretty good job of telling that story that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
We have another few minutes. Yes, Cyril.
Get myself unmuted here. We've been touching on things like connections,
We cannot hear you.
communication.
Yeah, we cannot hear you, Cyril.
Oh, I hear Cyril.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
I hear you.
okay.
That's fine. Okay, go for it.
All right. Strange. I was just curious about the communication aspect of it. Like, have you seen patterns or predictability in the way the mycelium respond to different stimuli, like your cat walking by, or the temperature going up, or the window opening? Or are we just listening to the sounds of digestion? Something like that.
Right. I have, there are patterns. Generally, like for instance, a lot of the data that I collected from really and started putting online around 2017, 2018 and sharing on SoundCloud, usually I'm collecting data over like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, things like that. Because I noticed, like at first, it might seem very chaotic and things like that. I've just put electrodes within, this organism. And after some time, not always, because I have, I usually set parameters. I do the whole thing, like everything's set up the same. And there's a particular fungi, and that I've mentioned, it's called reishi or lingzhi. It's Ganoderma lucidum. It's a bracket fungi. It tends to have a lot of pattern and melody, if you will. Like if we just run the straight data through, to me, it sounds musical. If I compare it to listening to another organism with the same parameter sets of like Pleurotus austriatus, so oyster mushrooms tend to be very active. Now, by comparison, that could be digestion. However, I've had group situations where people are in the room and children, whenever they run up to a container that the mycelium is encased in and even covered, the sounds immediately change. Like they become very frenetic. And why that is such a mystery to me. I'm really wanting to know why those changes. Or somebody walked into a situation, they walked into the room, the mycelium was creating, let's say, the soundscape. They walked in and the sound stopped. There were 12 other people in the space and everybody looked at each other and the person was in the room a bit and then they left. And the moment they left, the music started again. And that freaked some people out. They left immediately. I was nowhere near the sound system. I wasn't playing, but that fascinates me. So what is creating that? I've also had a residency in Australia where I was hooking up gum trees for like 24 hours, 48 hours. And there are patterns that happen. So I was wondering, for instance, with trees I've seen in Australia, there seems to be a dawn chorus like there is with birds. So is that like like an energy, like a sugar surge, like carbohydrates are happening. And then in the evening, a similar thing happened, but throughout the day, it was fairly, like it stayed the same. These patterns repeated itself, almost like a heartbeat. So I can't answer at the moment, like what that, I don't know if I will be able to. I know that there are, I don't know. I know there's other scientists that are right now like starting to map the mycelium network, like taking DNA samples, first of all, and looking at electricity and what's happening there. And that is really fascinating. So I personally do not think it's just digestion happening, because I've worked with a lot of the same, fungi now for like 6 or 7 years. And I keep seeing these patterns happening where slime mold, for instance, like a totally different organism, like an amoeba in a way. And that, my partner calls it bad jazz. It's just like these tonal clusters happen. But so it's almost like a rise, if you will, if you were listening to it musically, it's like the scales are like it's going up, 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 and then it drops, and then it goes up, 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 where the mycelium is entirely different. It's there's something going on there for sure.
And for what it's worth, as we install this project, I'll be collecting data. So, and analyzing it after. So if we find something, maybe we can write something up and share it. Because it's as much almost research on the fly as it is knowing things ahead of time, which is exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a question.
Yep.
So this is
Fix.
and,
Can you put yourself on shouting mode? Sorry, thank you.
Broadcasts. Like this is fascinating, and I guess follow up a bit on the last question. So I'm a researcher in AI, and I have like one question, but also like a follow up on the previous thing, which is like I will be super interested in like what you're talking about of like kind of analyzing this data, like that's you're collecting, like trying to find patterns, like what you're describing it. But like if we have more data, maybe we can like discover more patterns and like learn more about it, which I think is super cool. Like like if I could collaborate in something like that, I may be interested in that as well. But my actual question was also a bit related, but more about the idea of communication. So you mentioned Andrew Adamansky. I haven't read his recent work that you mentioned, but I only saw like the headlines saying like, they communicate and they have like 50 words or something to communicate. And also, like relatedly, my postdoc supervisor works in like language emergence, more in the context of humans, but I guess in general in AIs and so on. Like, how do intelligent organisms create a language to communicate emergently, right? In a situation. So my question was like, have you experienced anything that feels like the beginnings of that, like some shared language, like something that feels like you are communicating in some way at all, or do you think that's even possible that it could happen?
I don't personally think it's impossible. I had someone recently ask me a very similar question, and without wanting to sound like a total kook, which maybe, usually I work with mushrooms and that's enough. But I've had some things happen while I'm working with these organisms where it was incredibly profoundly odd. And I wondered if something like that was starting to happen. Now, and I know too, like to get back to the newspaper articles, of course, they're super sensationalizing the whole, they have 50 words or, maybe they can, because maybe that's something in the article, that Andrew does say is that maybe they're saying something, maybe they're saying nothing at all. You know, it could be, yeah. But I think that it's definitely very fascinating. And I wonder, you know, I don't know, like, would we see part of my interest in looking, and maybe this is really far-fetched, looking at the atomic level and the frequencies, is in looking at those frequencies, is it possible then to use that frequency as a form of language with the mycelium network itself? Like if you're looking at a certain type of mycelium and it's vibrating at this rate, can that be played back somehow? Like, or can you emulate that vibration or that frequency? And could that be used as a means to communicate with that particular mycelium within its natural, you know, environment? I don't know if that's completely out there, but I'm interested in finding out. Look at that little mushroom.
Oh.
Hello. But yeah,
we are running out of. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
We need to be mindful of the time.
Okay.
We have another couple of minutes, perhaps, before we reach the end of our time. So, if anyone has a very short question, the last one. If not, you know, I invite you to carry on the discussion on Discord, because there is definitely a lot of things in the mind of a lot of people here. So again, thank you, Nanotopia and Neurochem, for this very fascinating talk. Please join me to say thank you to both our speaker today.
Thank you.
Love this.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
everyone. Thank you, people, for coming.
You know, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for the audience on Twitch. Thank you, Jason Moore, for the production here, and thanks, Carlos, for the work on camera. Fix is here, so